Important: use this animation guide only as a reminder. For complete IUS or intrauterine system insertion instructions, please refer to the full prescribing information on lilettahcp.com. Use aseptic technique during the entire insertion procedure. First, remove the sealed tray containing Liletta from the box and inspect the tray carefully. Do not use the product if the packaging, inserter, or IUS is damaged. Lay the tray on a flat surface with the peel-off lid side up. Then, peel to remove the lid from the tray. Next, remove the inserter from the tray by grasping the handle below the sliders and twisting gently. Do not attempt to remove the inserter by pulling on the tube. Ensure both sliders are pushed fully forward. The single line marking on the handle will align with the single line marking on the blue slider. The double line markings on the handle will align with the double line markings on the green slider. Grip the handle, keeping your thumb or finger in the groove of the blue slider over the number 1, and apply forward pressure while ensuring both sliders are pushed fully forward. To load Liletta into the inserter, the arms of the IUS must be horizontal. Adjust the rotation of the IUS if needed by using a flat, sterile surface of the tray. While maintaining forward pressure on the blue slider, gently pull the threads straight back to load Liletta into the insertion tube. It's important to ensure even tension is applied to both threads when pulling. Then, pull the threads upward or downward to lock the threads into the cleft at the bottom end of the handle. You must lock the threads in the cleft to prevent the IUS from moving out of the top of the insertion tube. Once locked in the cleft, let go of the threads. After the IUS is loaded, continue to sustain forward pressure on the blue slider so that just the tips of the IUS are visible. You'll know Liletta has been loaded correctly when the IUS is completely within the insertion tube, when just the tips of the IUS are visible at the top of the tube. If the IUS is not correctly loaded, do not attempt insertion. The Liletta inserter can be reloaded. To release the IUS, pull the blue slider back with your thumb until the groove becomes aligned with the green slider. Gently pull the threads out of the cleft, return the blue slider to the forward position, and repeat the loading steps. Once Liletta is properly loaded into the inserter, adjust the flange to the measured uterine depth based on the sounding. To adjust, place the flat side of the flange in the tray notch or against a sterile edge inside of the tray. Slide the insertion tube to move the flange to the correct measurement. Ensure the flat sides of the flange are in the same horizontal plane as the handle. If at any step there is a need to touch a sterile surface, including the flange, sterile gloves should be used. If required, you may bend or straighten the insertion tube to accommodate the anatomical orientation of the uterus. Be careful to avoid sharp bends to prevent kinking, and do not touch above the flange unless you are using sterile gloves. Apply gentle traction on the tenaculum and continue to apply forward pressure on the blue slider while inserting the loaded insertion tube through the cervical os. Advance the tube until the upper edge of the flange is 1.5 to 2 centimeters from the external cervical os. Maintain forward pressure on the blue slider throughout the insertion process. Do not advance the flange to the cervix at this time. Do not force the inserter. If necessary, dilate the cervical canal. Using your thumb or finger, gently slide only the blue slider back. You will feel slight resistance initially to move the blue slider out of its starting position. Continue to move the blue slider back until you feel slight resistance again, as the blue and green sliders will merge together to form a joint slider recess. Do not move the blue slider any more than is necessary to create the recess. Maintain the green slider so that the double line markings on the slider and the insertion handle remain aligned. This will allow the IUS arms to open in the lower uterine segment. It's important not to pull the sliders back any further. Doing so could prematurely release the IUS at the incorrect location. Wait 10 to 15 seconds to allow for the arms of the IUS to fully open. Without moving the sliders, advance the inserter until the flange touches the cervix. If you encounter fundal resistance, do not continue to advance. Liletta is now in the fundal position. Fundal position is important to prevent expulsions. While holding the inserter steady relative to the cervix and maintaining the joint slider recess, move both sliders, blue and green together, down toward the number 3 on the handle until you hear a click, and the green indicator is visible at the bottom of the handle. This signifies deployment. Look at the cleft to ensure the threads were properly released, and the green thread release indicator is visible. If the threads were not released, or if an audible click is not heard, grasp the threads and gently pull them out of the cleft. Now that the threads have been released, withdraw the inserter from the uterus. Use sharp, blunt-tipped scissors to cut the IUS threads perpendicular to the thread length, leaving about 3 centimeters visible outside the cervix. Do not cut the threads at an angle, as this may leave sharp ends, and do not apply tension or pull on the threads when cutting them to prevent displacing the IUS. The insertion of Liletta is now complete. To download the insertion instructions within the full prescribing information, please see lilettahcp.com.